Hey guys, today we're going to talk about evidence-based practice, what it is and why it's so important. So first off, evidence-based practice is so important because it's what I base all of my recommendations off of at Rapid Fitness. And obviously when you give recommendations, you want to give the best recommendations that you possibly could. So you don't want to just give a recommendation based on a blog you read online or what your friend Sally thought she saw her friend Gary doing. You know, it's not just random, it is a combination of the best available information out there. So what is evidence-based practice? It's a combination of three things. The first is the best available peer-reviewed research out there. The second is going to be practitioner experience. And the third is going to be client preference and needs. So back to number one, the best available literature. I'm not going to take research that they did in a little petri dish in a lab and apply that to a human, because that's not going to be the best available literature out there. What I'm looking for is randomized control trials done in humans. What does that look like? It means that a randomized control trial is when you lock a set of humans in a space for a set amount of time and you control all of their behaviors or most of their behaviors for a set amount of time. It helps give you a really good idea as to what may have caused a certain outcome in a study. You take that versus something done in a petri dish. The petri dish does not act like your body. Your body has all these different systems that keep you alive and keep you healthy, which is amazing. That's why we're going to want to use a randomized control trial versus something done in a petri dish or something done on rats. Not to say that that literature is completely useless, but it is very limited in the nature that we could apply it. The second aspect is practitioner experience. So once I have the best available information, I can't just apply that right to a client. I have to consider my experience as a practitioner when I'm looking at this client. Is this going to be what's most appropriate for that client? Is this actually going to work in real life versus in a lab? So I take my experience and I apply it to the client. And number three is going to be client needs and preferences. So what that looks like is I'm not going to take a client and force them to intermittent fast when their favorite part of every day is making breakfast with their kids. You know, so I'm not going to force them to fast until noon if they prefer to eat breakfast with their kids. And that's part of the different facets of health. If they enjoy that time with their kids and their family, that's awesome. I just have to recognize like that's their preference. And maybe intermittent fasting is a poor fit for this specific client. There's a lot of situations that you could run that through. Really, the preferences and the needs of the client are just as important as the other two aspects of evidence-based practice. So we take all three of those, we combine them together, and we can get the most appropriate, the most effective, and the most sustainable recommendations for each individual client. I encourage clients to ask questions about not only the literature, but like, hey, do you think that this is something that I could stick to and adhere to in the long term? And for everybody, it looks so different. There's no one-size-fits-all recommendation. So that's why when it comes to saying that everybody should be doing intermittent fasting, or everybody should be doing low carb, or everybody should eat like a vegan, it's just not going to be the case. Everybody's going to want to diet differently. They're going to want to live differently. So that's why my job is to basically educate each individual client about the literature that exists and what I've seen and what I think would be most appropriate, so then the client can basically self-select the best intervention for themselves, and that's going to tend to be what will build the most adherence in the long term. So that's what evidence-based practice is. We'll see you in the next video.